What we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode from the WDW Radio Archives. I am Lou Mangello, and this is show number 738. And each week-ish, I'm going to select an evergreen episode of the show to share that maybe you haven't heard before, or one you haven't heard in a long time, from interviews to top 10s, relevant reviews and guides and Wayback Machines. It's a great way to visit and revisit some of our favorite episodes, including some of the ones that you have suggested that I share from the archives. And as I do with all the archive shows, rather than upload the entire episode, I'm going to take out the relevant segment or segments, cutting out the intro and outro and contests and some of the out-of-date maybe news and rumors. If you want to hear the full episode, I'll let you know the original show number so you can always go back into your podcast player or feed and listen to the full episode. So on our last episode from the archives, I purposely chose to share one that included our friend Jim Korkis. And as I shared on that last archive show, as well as in the WDW Radio Clubhouse, Jim was hospitalized with stage 4 cancer. And I've been in touch with him and visiting him on a weekly basis and helping him with some of his personal affairs and maybe even sneaking in some of his favorite foods like Arby's and dark chocolate. But this week it is with the most heaviest of hearts that I share that our friend Jim unexpectedly passed on July 28th. I shared in the Clubhouse details about my conversations with Jim and his brother, as well as some of the last visits I had with Jim just a week prior to his passing. I had a long conversation with his brother about him and his wishes and his gratitude and his love for you that gave him such joy, knowing that you appreciated him and his work. This was very much a shock in terms of the timing, but I take great comfort knowing that he didn't suffer physically or mentally, and he is in a much better place. And I really want to thank you for not only listening to Jim's voice over the years on the show, but coming to meet him at some of our WDW Radio events and purchasing and sharing reviews on his more than 30 incredible books on Disney history, and most importantly, letting him know that he was loved and appreciated. He never wanted or asked for much, and I think knowing that he made people happy was, for him, his greatest rewards. And to anyone and everyone who helped with his GoFundMe to assist with his hospital and rehab bills, please know that Jim was grateful to the point of tears. And I think it was less about the money than it sort of being this tangible reminder of just letting him know how much he was loved. And I had bought and I'd set up a laptop for Jim while he was in the hospital so he could check email and check the GoFundMe. And I know how much he enjoyed being able to see the outpouring of love and comments and stories and messages. And I like to think that even in his last days, it brought him great joy and comfort. I think sometimes, maybe we don't know how much we're loved, and I want to believe that Jim finally did. So thank you what you did to and for Jim. Please keep him in your thoughts, in your prayers, and smile knowing that he is somewhere better, sharing a chili with Walt and a meal with his departed parents. So I know he loved and missed very, very deeply. I will miss Jim incredibly, not just here on the show, but the friendship that he and I shared. To me and many others, Jim is and always will be a true Disney legend. And this week, I wanted to once again offer up an episode as a tribute and honor to Jim. And timing being everything, I chose one to connect to my conversation with Hoop Dee Do performer Rob Lott on show 737, because back on show 376, back in 2014, Jim and I looked at the history of the Hoop Dee Do musical review as we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the longest running show, not just in Walt Disney World, but in all of American musical theater. So we're going to look back on how the show got started, why it almost never came to be, and why it still remains so fun and popular. Of course, due to the incredible cast and crew like Rob Lott. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Hoop Dee Do musical review. Have you ever done it before? Is it something on your bucket list? Is it something that you do every time that you go? You can share your thoughts over in the WDW Radio Clubhouse at wdwradio.com/clubhouse, or call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WDW1 to share your story, not just about the Hoop Dee Do, but if you want to share a thought or memory or a favorite episode from and with Jim Korkis, I'd love to hear that and play it on the show as well. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode from the archives on the WDW Radio Show. Believe it or not, arguably Walt Disney World's most popular and longest-running attractions has been seen by millions of guests over many, many decades, yet it's still unknown or overlooked by many visitors. But this week, after serving countless helpings of fried chicken and strawberry shortcake and lots of corny jokes and laughs, the Hoop Dee Do musical review celebrates its 40th anniversary at Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort at Walt Disney World. And I thought, what better way to celebrate than to take a look back at the show with a man that knows a thing or two about Walt Disney World history and fried chicken. He is author, historian, and all-around nice guy. He is my friend, Mr. Jim Korkis.
Hoop Dee Do, Hoop Dee Do. Lou, it's just been too long. I'm glad you've invited me back on the podcast. I always love doing that. Always love talking with you about Walt Disney World history, and you've got some of the nicest listeners in the world. So it's always a great joy to share that information with them, because I know they love that, and they go out and they share those stories with other people.
And that is what it's all about. It's paying it forward and making people understand and appreciate the parks and the resorts even more. And, you know, that's the thing that I was saying in the introduction, Jim. It's kind of interesting that the most popular show, right? And we say the most popular show because they've done more than 37,000 performances over at Pioneer Hall. It's usually a sellout 3 times a night, and more than 10.5 million guests have seen it, right? So it's one of the longest continually running shows in American theater history, if not the longest. But interestingly enough, the most popular show at Walt Disney World doesn't feature Anna, Elsa, Mickey, or any of the Fab Five. And so many people haven't seen it. And, you know, before we get into sort of the history and how it came to be, I just think it's fascinating that when we talk about Hoop Dee Do, there's so many people say, oh, you know, I've been meaning to do it. Yeah, maybe one of these days. And they haven't had a chance to go see it.
Well, you know, it doesn't feature Anna and Elsa yet, but with plans to change Walt Disney World to Anna and Elsa Frozen World, you know, that will eventually reach out to there. But again, you know, as you say, you know, every show is packed. It's so popular. But I think because it's located out there at Fort Wilderness, and it's located out there at the far end of Fort Wilderness, that it sometimes makes it a challenge for Disney guests to work their way out there, and then, of course, to work their way back to whatever their resort is or whatever after you know, that final show. But yes, my gosh, you know, the original plans for Pioneer Hall was they were going to do nature lectures while people were eating. And they were going to show true life adventure films, you know, up on a big screen on that stage there, because the stage wasn't designed for performing. The stage was pretty much concrete, which was a huge problem, because when you're a dancer, you want to dance on wood that, has some give, or else, you wreck out your knee. So, after a few years of performing there, they changed it to a wood floor. But originally, that wasn't going to be the home of the Hoop Dee Do show. That was going to be lectures and films. And I think it was Card Walker who took a look, and he says, I don't want to sit there and eat and hear somebody talk about nature. So,
I think before we go on, I think it made sense, right? The original idea made sense. Fort Wilderness was supposed to be that place that was very different. It was all about campsites. It was about nature. So to have, camp-like nature programs and animal films and sort of that town hall meeting place for people to get together and play games and grab their food and have a place to sort of congregate and eat made sense, right, over at Fort Wilderness to do for breakfast and lunch and then sort of, gather around at dinner time. But Card Walker, you're right. It wasn't just about not wanting to do that, but it's also about maximizing revenue, right? You're not going to make a ton of money just having people getting together and playing games.
No, and actually money is going out. Money is going out to those lecturers. Money is going out, to rent those, even though they're Disney films, it's a different division. So you have to pay the different division for the use of those films, just like when the hotels are running cartoons on the TV sets. It's not like, oh, well, Disney gets those for free. No, that's a different division. That's a different department. They have to get compensation for the use of that. But I think that happens at Disney all the time, that there's a difference between, well, this is ideal and this works with the theme and all of this, and but in real life, the guests want something else, and so and of course Pioneer Hall wasn't even there when Fort Wilderness opened in 71. Crockett Tavern was. Crockett Tavern, in fact, was covered from head to toe with Davy Crockett stuff. I don't think people know Davy Crockett nowadays. Certainly my nephew doesn't, But Pioneer Hall didn't come around until 74, April 74. It was built, and it was built out of pine, but they didn't use Florida pine. I think they went somewhere like Montana or whatever.
Right. And they went to right.
That.
Right.
And,
the logs came from Montana, and the stones came from North Carolina because the pines in Florida just weren't tall enough.
Look how smart you are. Look how smart you are, showing off for those folks listening to that. You're absolutely right, of course. And again, that's another example of Disney wanting to do it right. We want to, especially in those days, especially with the opening of the Walt Disney World Vacation Resort there. The whole idea was, we want to do this right. We want to build something that is going to last, not something that's going to be, let's go on the cheap and, a year from now we'll come back and patch this up if we need to patch this up, whatever. Let's do it right in the first place.
Well, the model proved itself, too, already, because over at the Polynesian, they had the luau, which was selling out, right? They're turning guests away,
right.
So they realize people want something to do at night. They clearly need something else to do at night other than just going into the theme parks.
Right. And especially in those days when we're talking 71 to 75, and 75, by the way, was supposed to be the beginning and end of the second phase of Walt Disney World. You couldn't get everything into Walt Disney World when it opened in 71, and so there was a second phase that was supposed to be completed around 75. That's why you're getting Space Mountain and all that around that area. But yeah, there was no place to go. There was no place to go even downtown Orlando, Church Street Station and those nightclubs and bars and saloons didn't develop until much later. So there was really not much to do, at night at all. You see the fireworks and that's it. We're closed. Walt Disney World is closed. Go home and sleep.
The moose out front should have told you the parks are closed.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. People they were looking for something to do, and clearly there was very, very low hanging fruit in terms of a revenue stream for a dinner show that they could do not just once a night, but multiple times a night. And that's why Card Walker goes to Bob Janney and says, "You need to come up with some kind of show for this hall." Although it is clearly not the design is not conducive for a live show. You figure out what you're going to do and work around the balcony and the pillars and things like that, and get something in there ASAP. And
you're right on the money. That one of the things that they used as a model was that luau show out there at the Polynesian. Where you mix the entertainment with food, and so you're increasing your revenue cost. Even if it's all you can eat, there's only so much you can eat. I love going to Sweet Tomatoes, and it's all you can eat, and after a while you get to the point where you say, I can't have anything more. I can't even have a wafer thin mint. The first time I went on the Disney cruise, the Disney Magic, I took a look, and my gosh, yes, it's and I thought, this is going to be one. And I'm sitting there, and I'm stuffed to the gills, and I'm looking at these homemade fresh donuts, and there's no more room, and it's like, I can't have it anymore.
Just so you know,
there's more I can eat.
There's no time limit unless the restaurant closes. Just
yeah. So again, they use the luau show as a format, and again, Disney, bringing in college kids was one of the big things that Walt Disney World started, and then later, Disneyland picked up on that. And you brought out college kids, and they could get a school credit for attending and all that. And the most popular program in the 70s was entertainment. You bring out kids who have these aspirations to be entertainers, whether it's a singer or a dancer or playing a musical instrument, whatever. And so Disney was offering during the summer only, during that break from college, you could come out, and Disney would basically show you how they do it. So Kids of the Kingdom was going on, and I miss the Kids of the Kingdom show. I love the Kids of the Kingdom show at Disneyland. I loved it at Walt Disney World. I wish they would bring that back. It was based on Up With People, but it was the Disney version of that, and it was just like, you cannot leave that show without feeling, enriched and encouraged, and so they would bring the college kids out. They would stick them into that show. They would stick them into the marching band. There were some other entertainment opportunities, but basically there weren't the richness of shows that we have today at Walt Disney World. But basically at the time there weren't a lot of opportunities. So, oh my gosh, we need a show here. We need it quickly. Let's just have the kids do it.
Well, right, because you need a show, you need it quickly, but oh, by the way, there's no money for casting. So get what you can from what we have in here already.
Right, because again, there weren't a lot of people, especially when we're talking 71 to 75. Orlando didn't have a talent pool to pull from like you had in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, if you needed a performer, if you needed a musician, you could get one within 20 minutes. But out in Orlando, you didn't have that huge pool of entertainment professionals that you could pull from if you decided you were going to do a new show. You'd have to go around the country and audition, or you'd have to offer people in Los Angeles a contract and then relocate them and pay for the relocation expenses, to get them out here. So, oh my gosh, we've got these kids, and listen, I've seen very talented college performing people. And so, we're going to pull from that. So you have the Pioneer Hall opening in April of '74, and then you're having the Hoop Dee Do Revue opening in June of '74.
Well, the interesting thing, too, about these students that they have to pull from these kids that thought they were going to be there just for summer performers like Kids of the Kingdom, they got 600 applications, right? 600 applications for 6 slots. 2 comics, 2 singers, 2 dancers, right? 6 bits, Dolly, Jim Handy, Flora Long, Johnny Ringo, and Claire de Lune for a show that you said, was coming up in April, in a space that was not necessarily meant for a dinner show. So it had all these sort of things working against it, right? You've got to get it in there in a space not meant for it, using kids that were not coming in for this. We've got no budget. And then when it does finally open, Jim, the first night, it did not do well at all. There were 6 tables, there was literally 1 table per member of the cast. It did not start off well and started off actually very slow before it really had some time to catch on.
Well, again, it's word of mouth because, again, as I said, it's in an extreme, out of the usual pathway location. Nobody's heard about this before, and again, you're paying a premium price, compared with if I want to eat, I can get a hamburger over here for less. Why am I paying extra for this here?
Well, I think the problem originally wasn't that, because obviously now you see the show, like I said, is selling out 3 times a night. The problem was they had no budget to market it, right? People, again, we think, oh, it's just Disney, it's just one big pot. They'll advertise a show that they're introducing on property. Gary Goddard, who was the director, literally was printing flyers and going to hotels and handing them out and going to the concierge to let them know and promote this show because he had no budget to advertise it. And it doesn't sort of make sense.
I'd forgotten that entirely. Yes, that's very true. That's absolutely true. So it's almost like one of those Mickey Rooney movies, Let's put on a show, Let's put on a show, and we'll go out and we'll get everybody in the neighborhood, and we'll go door to door and let them know it's there.
Unlike The Producers, which was meant to be a flop, this one actually ended up, doing well, and it changed a little bit, right? Originally, it was going to be called the Whoop Dee Do, the Whoop Dee Do Revue, and then they changed it to the Hoop Dee Do. But they brought on,
and I think even earlier than that, it was even a simpler title, like the Pioneer Hall Show or something like that. Before you got that in there. Once you get a lyricist and musician in there like Tom Adair, who'd created a lot of songs for Disney, especially for the Mickey Mouse Club and all that, and he's the one who comes up with Hoop Dee Do, which was a polka. It's not an Old West song, and
it's not a Disney song, right? People think everybody thought it was a Disney song, and it's not.
Well, see, again, that's one of those situations where it was so popular that people thought it's got to be in public domain. Just like the Happy Birthday song, it's so popular. It was written in 1950 by Milton DeLugg, who I met personally on The Gong Show because he was the musical director of The Gong Show. Milton DeLugg, the band with a thug, and nicest guy, in the world. And we talked because my brothers and I went on as singing, dancing hunchbacks, the Quasimodo Bel Airs. Quasimodo, do you know who's going to win the 3rd race? No, but I got a hunch. But we did some singing as well, so we got to talk with Milton DeLugg because he says, do you want the band to play along? Do you want it a cappella, whatever? But he had a huge, rich career. So in 1950, he does Hoop Dee Do Revue, and he teams up with Frank Lesser, who, what a terrific lyricist and musician, wrote the songs for Guys and Dolls, among other things. And so they get together and they put together this little polka, and they take it to Perry Como, who was a very popular singer in the 50s. And Perry Como literally says, I hate this. This is stupid. He literally says that.
It made me sick.
He's under contract.
It made me sick.
He's under contract, needs to have a song, to fill the B-side of a record. And so he records it, and by gosh, it goes up into the top 10. In fact, it's so popular in 1950 that it's not only recorded by Perry Como, it's recorded by K-Star and Doris Day, and both of their versions go up to the top 10. And then Milton DeLugg releases a version that goes up, So people, there's some, as soon as we say Hoop Dee Do, I bet people listening to this podcast are already singing it, or singing it in their mind. It's like one of those "It's a Small World" songs, that stick in there.
But they should go and listen. They should actually go, because you can find it obviously on YouTube. Go and listen to the original Perry Como version. Which I did. I went back and I listened to the Perry Como version. So,
and
I'm an old man. I liked it. I liked it. It doesn't have sort of the same type of feel and energy that the one that we were used to at Walt Disney World did. But again, knowing Perry Como, and I can see at the time in the 50s how and why that song would have been so incredibly popular.
Well, actually, it became more popular after the Perry Como version, simply because, yes, if you do it at the right pace, it's Milton DeLugg. One of the instruments he played was an accordion, so he wrote it for an accordion. It's a polka, so you play it at Oktoberfest, things like that, and whoop 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 whoop, and it just gets you going. And he never even knew that they were using the song, and Disney at the time thought they had gotten the clearances and all for this. And in fact, Milton DeLugg, the first time he saw the show, was a Disney cast member who was very interested in music, and I won't mention the man's name here. Took him to see Hoop Dee Do Revue because Milton had never seen it. He saw it, absolutely loved it. Didn't even worry that, he wasn't getting paid royalties or whatever, he was well enough off. However, Milton was not the only person involved with the song. Frank Lesser was. Now, Frank Lesser had passed away, quite a while before Hoop Dee Do Revue even, premiered, but his estate was very, very
protective.
That's a good word. Very, very protective. And so when Milton DeLugg got back and he was talking to people from the Frank Lesser, say, "Oh yeah, they're using that out there, and it's a bunch of kids, and it's wonderful, and all of that." Then the Lesser estate, the people who own the rights to the song, in 2009, 2010, sued Disney, and they wanted money for every single performance that had been done. And it was pointed out that Lesser only wrote the lyrics, and they had changed the lyrics of the song for the show. And apparently that made it even worse, because then the Lesser estate said, well, not only are you using our song, but you have made changes to it without, authorization. And oh my gosh, And so,
and I'm sure Disney was probably saying, "Well, we changed it enough to that it rises to the ranks of a parody, not to sort of get into the legal logistics of it, but trying to think as a recovering lawyer."
The Lesser estate responded by, "You can't use parody as a defense because it's like Mad Magazine. If Mad Magazine, uses a likeness of Marlon Brando for a parody of The Godfather, or they in some of their movie parodies, they go they write lyrics and they say, sing this to the tune of Old Man River or whatever. They're only doing that once. You have been using this continually for decades. So, that goes beyond the defense. A parody is sort of like a one-time thing, or maybe 2 or 3 times if but you go beyond that, you can't. And so, again, Disney brought out that, the clearances that they had from from the 70s, but apparently those clearances really didn't cover this particular situation. And so, of course, all of this got settled out of court because Disney likes to do that, because if you go to court, it then becomes public record. And not only does it become public record, but it sets a precedent. Well, you know all of this law stuff, right?
Yeah, I went to law school for a few years. Yeah, you're right. And, clearly it's one of those things that, okay, it is what it is, and they need to move on. So in 2011, the song changes. And people, of course, we're nostalgics, we're sentimentalists. We're so sad that it went, because for us, it was like taking It's a Small World out of It's a Small World. Like, that was a song associated with it.
It would be like rewriting the Mickey Mouse March, instead of saying, who's the leader of the club, now you go, the club leader is, wait a minute, no, it's who's the leader of the club. But yeah, so basically what they did is they, rewrote lyrics, rewrote a song, and the song is good and professional, but I will tell you, you walk out of that show and you are not humming that song.
Right.
But when you walked out of Hoop Dee Do Revue and they had Hoop Dee Do, Hoop Dee Do, you were being raucous and dancing around,
right.
And
it was catchy.
waving your handkerchief over your head, because they had taken your napkin away, So anyway, I'm glad that it got resolved so that the show continues. But I am sad that, the original Hoop Dee Do show song, the polka there, doesn't exist. But again, that gets back to that point that the show was going to be called all sorts of things until they picked that song, Hoop Dee Do, and that seemed to be the magic key, Boy, we've got that. That's what we're going to call this. Even though this has nothing to do with the Old West.
Right. Well, I think what they were doing, and if we're going back to this time in the early 70s where they're saying, look, you guys have to sort of put the show together on a shoestring budget, get these, kids together. I'm sure to a certain degree they were kind of flying by the seat of their pants, right? They're trying things out. They're trying different jokes. They're trying different scripts.
And
probably
again,
not going right. It probably isn't WDW saying this is what you exactly need to do and this is how you have to stick to it. It was sort of the Wild West in terms of what they were trying out.
Well, and again too, this is a show that's just supposed to last for the summer. Basically, it's the summer program was a 3-month program. They had more or less 1 week worth of rehearsal and then 11 weeks of performances, and then that was going to be it. The show was over, and then next year we'll come up with something else. This is a fun little... We talked about this before the podcast started, that often happens is you put in something that's only supposed to be a placeholder, only supposed to be there for a short time, and then the audience falls in love with it. My brother was responsible for helping write and direct the Pocahontas show for Disney Animal Kingdom. And he went into that project knowing that show was just supposed to be a placeholder to fill that location as a last-minute thing for about 3 months. And then they had plans to put in something more permanent. Well, audiences loved Pocahontas show. It lasted for about a decade there, And so the same thing happened with Hoop Dee Do Revue. Well, we don't have to look at all of this too closely. We don't have to analyze this and agonize about this because it's only a summer show, And at the end of the show, the cast is going away, So this is a nice little experiment, and we'll learn from this, and we'll go on to do something else. And as you said, it started off rough. But just the energy, just the whole thing tapped into something for audiences. And so at the end of the summer, they're looking at these college kids and they're saying, do you think you could stay? And maybe, and the kids are going, we got to go back to college. We got to graduate from college. Our mom and dad want us to graduate from college. We can't do this. And so they had to look for a permanent professional cast at that particular point. And yes, you're right. It's 3 sets of 2 couples. And a friend of mine, Alan Brune, who I went to Occidental College with, was the director of that show for about 6-7 years. And he said the way he looked at it is 1 set of couples, were heartmates, and another set were soulmates, but Dolly and Six Bits were primates. and he says that's why the show works, is because people get caught up with those 3 sets of couples there. He says, because there's not a lot of meat, there's not a lot of narrative there. What you're doing is you're immediately falling in love with either one set of those couples or all 3 of them, and you're following their story of the relationship, and that's the glue that's holding that all together there. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Yeah, and so you've got 1 set of couples that are the singers, 1 set of couples that are the dancers, and 1 set of couples that are the comic relief. So, and in fact, the original Dolly, the original college girl who played Dolly, went on to greater things. Did your research pull up what happened to her?
She's still there. I think she's still the executive director.
In charge of entertainment, yes. So you can build a Disney career, from doing that.
But, the one thing, too, we were talking about how the show almost never was, right, and almost went away very quickly. I'm sure they were probably saying to themselves, if this thing doesn't pick up quickly, we're doomed, right? We're out of here. Right. We've got no budget. We've got nobody coming to fill. We've got to, pay these people. But then, whether it was the music, whether it was something about it, it hooked on very quickly. And I think it got popular very quickly, so much so that they thought about saying, okay, well, wait a minute, we've got something here. We need to expand. We need to do something even more. And they realized that this building that was built not for this type of show wasn't going to suffice. They had actually considered creating an outdoor stage for it. Again, going back to this idea of being outside at Fort Wilderness at the campground. So Gary Goddard and Dorothea Redmond did some concept art for this full-sized Western street where a stagecoach would have come out and it would have been live horses there, and you could have had a show of like 1,500 people with chorus girls and gun battles and stuntmen like you used to have over in Frontierland, and they would have had this restaurant called the Deadwood Steakhouse, a big open air. Like, I hear that, and I really dig that idea, and am sad to see that it almost didn't become something. The Pioneer Hall is great because it's somewhat intimate, especially if you're on the lower level. But you think about what it would have been like to almost have a theatrical, stage show, that was on a much grander scale.
Well, but again, what one of the things that killed that idea, of course, was the Luau show, because the Luau show was now having challenges with weather.
Right.
When you did the show. Because originally the Luau show was open. You looked out and you saw the blackness of the lagoon behind you. That was one of the reasons for that electrical show out on the lagoon, was to create a backdrop for the Luau show, more or less, because it was dark and all that. But my gosh, if it started to rain or if it started to get cold, and we do experience winter in Florida. You get about 2 weeks of winter, right. But it's non-consecutive. It's non-consecutive days, but you do get 2 weeks worth of winter. But or like what we're experiencing right now, which is like, 11 o'clock at night, it's 89 degrees or 90 degrees, and there's the humidity and all that. So that was one of the things that killed the outdoor show. But I'm with you. I would have loved to have seen that. But again, that also involved a significant, financial investment, and some of the accountants, at Team Disney take a look and they go, "Well, it's working right now. Are we going to get significantly that much more money if we invest, up to this point. Yeah, because Pioneer Hall really wasn't designed for that. You had those pillars inside there. The sight lines are not as great as you would like. They originally they were going to extend those balconies until entertainment goes, look, if you extend the balconies, the people in the back are not going to be able to see the stage. If you do a tier thing, well, no, that's going to cost too much. We can't do that. The funny thing is, as you say, this is the longest running musical show here in America, and which, again, I regret because I grew up out in California, and I'd go see the Golden Horseshoe Revue, and at one point in history, that was the longest running, musical show in America. Wally Bogue. I still miss Wally Bogue. But anyway, the whole thing is it works in a place that really it has no, logically, it shouldn't work at all.
Right. And it not only has it worked, but it really has worked for 40 years, and they haven't really changed very much at all, right? So we talked about the song being changed. The old apple pie hoedown changed in 1939.
The dessert has changed.
Right, you go from apple pie to strawberry shortcake. And then other than that, the only thing they don't do that they used to do is used to be able to, they encourage you to get up on your chair and wave your napkins. Now, obviously, for safety concerns, the lawyers must have stepped in and said, well, don't.
The same way that Walt would allow people to just sit up on top of a stagecoach at Disneyland in 1955. And if you take a look, they just have a little step ladder that they put up to get people to climb up there and to climb off. I just recently saw a picture where they had a cast member, and he had one foot on the side of the stagecoach and one on the wheel, so that the wheel wouldn't move as people were getting off this step ladder. So life has changed considerably.
Yeah, well, and you're not riding donkeys. You're not riding live donkeys around the parks.
That would take a bite at you if they were irritated.
Well, and it's funny.
If I was a donkey working at Disneyland and people were on my back, I'd get irritated too.
But it's funny too. We're talking about sort of changes in terms of what has gone away because you can't have people standing on chairs and potentially falling down. And I get that, right? You want to sort of.
I do. I get that entirely.
But
yes.
they will,
and especially today, I think people are more likely to fall off of a chair than they would in the 70s or even 80s. I think people, especially at Disney, pay less attention.
Yeah,
these days.
And look, beer and wine and sangria is served there to the adults, and beer and wine, sangria, and standing on chairs, waving napkins with a chicken wing in your hand is not the recipe for success. But taking that out of the equation, the only other sort of small changes that have really happened is, and I think that this is still there. The last time I was there, one of the characters went into timeout. Which that was never something that existed back when I was a kid. That, I think, is a relatively new thing. So, I saw that, and I think too, somebody told me that they now have brought in a verse or a parody of "Do You Want to Build a Snowman?" in there recently too. So I need to go back.
So Anna and Elsa have invaded.
See,
Hoop Dee Do was so popular. How popular was it, Jim? It was so popular, and you're just a tadpole, so you probably don't remember this, but out here in Orlando, it inspired other dinner theaters, and I think some of your listeners might be of a comparable age here, so they might remember this. But in Orlando, they used to have Fort Liberty and King Henry's Feast. And these were run by the same organization that did Legends in Concert, where you have Elvis impersonators and Lou Mongello impersonators and things like that on a stage. But basically, in I think it's around 86, they opened King Henry's Feast on International Drive. And so it was a castle. It's where Olive Garden is today, if people are familiar with that. But you would go in, and there would be this huge so it was like a semicircular theater, and in the center you would have knights battling, and you had King Henry up there at the top, and he would actually pick a queen or a princess or something from the audience, and you had the tables, and it was all you could eat, and you could see this, and that was so successful that in '87, out on 192, I always called it the Fort Liberty Dinner Theater. Actually, it was Wild Bill's Dinner Theater, and the whole complex there was called Fort Liberty. But it was the same thing. You had it was in the round. You had a center stage, and you had a Wild West show. But again, it would stop, and those people on the outer circle there, would get served all-you-can-eat stuff, and this would go on. And those shows were so popular, and they would still be running today. They both closed around 2000 because the Legends in Concert thing went bankrupt. So it took those other two theaters with them. But there are other theaters today in Orlando, and I know you're probably one of those people, Lou, who don't go to anywhere except on Disney property. I have friends who come out to visit from California, and they will not go eat at Crossroads because it is not Disney property. I said, it's just down the street from downtown Disney. I'll come pick you up. No, it's not Disney property.
I do eat outside of Disney property, but I think some people, and you know what it is, Jim? I think, and this is a separate conversation, but I think when people come to Walt Disney World to vacation here, they're coming here, they want to be inside the bubble, the cocoon, the blanket of the warm, comforting blanket of Disney, because they know what kind of experience they're going to have here. They want to be immersed in it the entire time they're here. So if they feel like they're going out to a chain restaurant at Crossroads or iDrive, they are now taking themselves out of the experience that they've waited and saved so much for. So I do get that, because I was very much like that too.
Thank you, Michael Eisner. Thank you, Mike. No, because that was Michael Eisner's argument. He says that's why we're building Pleasure Island, is because guests really don't want to leave here to go to those wonderful restaurants and saloons and bars on Church Street Station. So we're going to build the Disney version of that here at Pleasure Island. And that was part of the concept of Animal Kingdom, too. People don't want to leave here to go to Busch Gardens, so we'll have an live animal experience right here. And I think there is some logic to that and some justification to that, and also the fact that at Disney, you'll be safer, and it'll be cleaner, and it'll be a more controlled experience. But there's still dinner theaters out in Orlando. There's Capone's, which is done up, as 1920s gangsters, and you have to knock on a door and give a password in order to go, and you can get spaghetti and all that. And then there's the Pirates dinner theater.
Right, but what I consistently hear, excuse me, is, and look, I'm a fan first, and I'm thinking about how, especially when I did not live here, and even now that I do, you'll go to something like that, you may try it out, and you'll be like, it was nice, but it's not Disney. You'll try another cruise line, but you're going to come back and go, you know what? It wasn't Disney. I didn't get the same experience that I had there, so why am I going to even bother? I still haven't, obviously, I haven't seen and done it all at Disney, because not everybody has seen the Hoop Dee Do yet. And I think that clearly illustrates the point as to why this show, right? How has it had such longevity without changing hardly anything for more than 40 years? Because it embodies everything that is Disney, right? It's that fun, family-friendly, great entertainment, interactive kind of thing, hour and a half, lots of fun, it's safe, good food, good value, and you come out smiling. And
I think one of the things that you touched on, which I agree with completely, family friendly. And I think the Hoop Dee Do Revue show appeals to all ages of guests, but I think young kids enjoy it just as much, even if it's on a different level. I know that sometimes you can take young kids to because again, I'm an uncle. I've had nieces, I've had nephews. I've got a young nephew right now that I take places, and I know that they can be very particular. But I think one of the virtues of Hoop Dee Do is they get the young kids involved in that whole experience.
Right, and I went with my family just a couple of months ago because my kids wanted to go, because we love going to Fort Wilderness. We go there sometimes during the holidays especially, and we'll go eat at Trail's End and get a golf cart and drive around, and I'm a big fan. And they wanted to see Hoop Dee Do, and they loved it. I was watching them more than I was watching the show, and they sat there with their mouths agape, and they were smiling, and they were laughing, and they're singing. I'm like, that's it. Like, this is why we come here. Because of that.
But your son and daughter are like 26 and 30 now, aren't they?
Sometimes
I think my daughter... Or they just act that age, right?
Yeah. But, and look, to sort of, wrap things up, I think that's what it is. It's about fun family entertainment. You get all-you-can-eat chicken and ribs and the cornbreads and the food.
And the chicken is delicious. The last time I was there and I had the chicken... I think it's some of the best fried chicken on Disney property there.
Yeah, and they also have the other thing too, Disney adapting to requests and special needs. They also have like grilled salmon and squash and vegetables, like for if you want some healthier food as well. They've got 3 shows a night, 4, 6:15, and 8:30. You can also choose different seating options, whether you want a floor or balcony. And they'll run from about $56 to $66 for adults, $29 to $35 for kids. Which
really is reasonable for the amount of entertainment you're getting and the amount of food that you're getting. I think that's not an outrageous price.
Right. Think about what it takes to take your family out to dinner and go to a movie, especially when I go see something like in 3D. You're going to be paying the same thing. It's an hour and a half. I think you could actually make it a longer evening by going down to Fort Wilderness early, wandering around, looking at the barn, looking at the pictures of Walt and the horses. Actually, if you go and listen back to show number 362, everything you ever wanted to know about Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground, we really talk about the things to do there that every guest is welcome to come and do and explore and enjoy. Then you can go and check out the show.
The lawnmower tree has been removed.
I know. The lawnmower was sort of things that last 40 years or so. The poor lawnmower was out in the elements for too long. But you can
now, in full disclosure, you need to share with the audience. Have you ever been pulled up on stage as a volunteer, or any of your family pulled up as a volunteer?
I have not.
Well, I think that should be a challenge to the performers at Hoop Dee Do, that the next time that Lou Mangello is in the house, he needs to be pulled up there.
I'll have to go to Category 3 and well, it doesn't matter. Even if you're up in the balconies, they can still take you and pull you down. And that's what I love, Jim, is that the performers, when they do mix in with the audience, they do go up to the balconies too, so everybody gets the same type of show. It is definitely something I think that everybody should do and check out at least once. I would love to hear from the people who are listening. Have you been to Hoop Dee Do? If so, what do you think? If you haven't, why not? And hopefully has this podcast or have what you heard about Hoop Dee Do.
And I'd love to hear from people who saw Hoop Dee Do back there in the 70s and 80s and have seen it now. And if, what they see in terms of any changes at all. Because like you, I don't, other than, of course, the main song there, I don't see anything really that significant. I think, I'm sure there's been some lines that have been changed over the years and all that, but it works as a good, solid show. And I think it's a happy show. So, you go out and you feel satisfied. You feel full, not only in terms of what you've eaten, but full in terms of that emotional thing of, yes, I had a good time and I feel satisfied. I feel that, I got a beginning, middle, and an end.
and I think the end is that you come out smiling. And I think that is why. And I think there are people who are listening who do go often, because I think it does have, to a certain degree, an adventurous club-like following, and sort of people that continually go. They know every word, they know what's coming next, they know every line. but they love going because of the type of experience. They have connections with the characters and the performers, and it is sort of where they call home, right? It's that place that you know what you're going to get every time you go, and that's why they go back every time.
And those who are frequent visitors, where's the best place to sit? Yeah. You know, I wherever I've sat, I don't feel that there's a bad seat in the house there. At least for me, I've enjoyed every place I've sat. But is there a better place to sit?
There you go. So if you want to book it online, you could book it 180 days out by calling 407-WDW-DINE. And after you book your trip to the Hoop Dee Do musical review and Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground, please go to WDWRadio.com. There you can comment on this week's podcast. Would love to hear your thoughts there. You can also tweet me or go to Facebook. I know Jim will be watching the comments as well. And in the show notes, you will also find links to all of Jim Korkis's library of books, where he's got so many.
And in fact, here's an announcement for WDW Radio listeners. Coming out in October, Vault of Walt, Volume 3. So make sure you put that on your Christmas list to put in your Christmas stocking, along with Lou's book, 102 Things. And also check out themeparkpress.com, which has a lot of great Disney books for your Christmas shopping.
There you go. And hopefully we will see you, Jim Korkis, at the Hoop Dee Do and back on the show soon.
And you know, Lou, if I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the pasture.